thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm going to start recording now.
Okay.
So, how's everything?
Everything's good. It's so good to see you. I feel like it's a minute since I've laid eyes on you, but I'm
I
glad we talked the
know.
other
When we
day.
chat, it's usually just over the phone and not like a video call.
It is, yeah. So it's good to
So,
see you.
where are you right now? It looks so cute behind you.
Oh, thank you. I did I tell you this that I'm getting into self-love coaching?
I think you mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm expanding my brand a little bit, and this is my new coaching office.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It's also like just my private office where I can get away from and do my work of the business and do my writing and do whatever I need to do, kind of a way. It's upstairs from the store. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Where are you? Are you?
So, I'm still at camp. Yeah, I'm in my cabin at camp, but now I have this like hands-free like tripod thing. So I'm trying to
Okay.
like work with that with my phone and do a little more, keep it a little more profesh, even though I'm traveling everywhere. So,
Have a laptop precariously balanced?
right, exactly, just everywhere. But yeah, tell people a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Jaclyn McCabe, and I own a plus size boutique in New Orleans called Jackie Blue. And I've been in the plus size fashion industry um since 2006. And I had a store in the quarter for 8 years. I live in New Orleans. And I had a store in the quarter for 8 years, and I closed that a few years ago. I moved out to LA and took a little hiatus and worked in production and worked with a plus size designer and all that fun stuff. And then I came back to New Orleans about 3.5 years ago and opened a different version of a plus size boutique. And I'm really excited and happy with all of the life changes, right? Like I started my first store when I was in my early 20s. So a lot of my life has changed since then. And a lot of different ways that I've approached the industry have changed since then. And I feel like I'm in my most authentic self, and I feel like my store is reflecting that, and that everything in the boutique is something that I would personally wear. I keep in mind different socioeconomic types, and I keep in mind different ages, right? Because being plus size, we kind of just get everyone. And so when I buy, I think like, would I have worn that when I was 20, or would I wear that when I'm 60, or would I wear that today? So I do keep that in mind. But then I think the other things we're doing here that I'm very excited about is I'm community building in a way that I just found was so important, and that like this is great. Like this, like these virtual communities that exist on the internet, like have probably been bigger factors in saving myself than anything else, because there's so much beauty in that identification, and that like, oh, look at that fat person, like they're living their best life, like maybe I can do that too. But there's something that I think we're missing when we can touch, feel, hug, squeeze, cry together, laugh together, drink together, swim together, like whatever that is, eat meals together. So I'm working on a community building aspect in this with this boutique that comes up in different ways. Like I bring authors into town, or we get together for movie nights. We did a Shrill screening. I've done a Not So Skinny Dip, a plus size pool party for 2 years in a row now. So like that kind of fun thing. We're getting ready to start this Not So Skinny happy hour. There's a bunch of us going to Lizzo together. I didn't sponsor that clearly, but like we're all getting together to go. So like that's a fun thing that's happening. I kind of think of my job as in three pieces. So like we have the boutique downstairs, and then we have the community thing that we're doing. And then I'm getting into coaching. I'm just really seeing like in my own journey, like just how many women just hate themselves, right? And it's not exclusive to plus size, right? But that is my heart, right? Like that's my niche, that's my heart. That's what I've chosen to hold space for women in this world that are plus size and don't love themselves, and have what I used to be like, right? And they don't have what I have now. And so I'm really excited. I'm thinking at the end of this year I'll officially get my coaching practice launched, and I can really dig in and help people get to this like deep emotional, spiritual work that I have found so healing in my own life around my body and myself and all of it, right?
That's
So
so exciting. Oh my goodness. That's so much, but also exciting. And I feel like Yeah, with the life coaching, because I really do feel like, especially in our community, but just people in general need like a mentor and someone that can help them, like, who can help guide them through like difficult portions of their life. And I feel like finally, and hopefully it'll be getting better, but finally we're getting to a place socially where it's not as stigmatized to ask for help or to say that you need help or that you're not okay. And I feel like slowly through these like social media communities that you were like referring to, we're able to discuss that more and destigmatize that a little bit. But it actually goes into like taking action when you can hire someone to help you actually, move through those more difficult times. So I definitely think that that's exciting, and I'm happy that you're taking that on. I'm sure that can be overwhelming and a lot, but
I'm taking care of myself really well in it, and that like I'm not gonna actually officially launch the practice for paying clients until I feel like I can be the best coach for you, and I'm willing. And so I can't. So because of that, I'm frustrating people by not giving them a date. But I just want to make sure that like I'm at my best and I'm the most confident. And I also want my certification. Like coaching is one of those things that anybody can hang a sign on their door and say they're a coach. And it was very important to me to have proper training in that and have some ethics behind that. And, because it's tricky stuff we're working with, right? So
yeah, emotions and all of that stuff.
So
so I have my little like questions here.
Bring them.
I emailed you them ahead of time, but I kind of like these conversations to be more free flowing. Like I said in the beginning, we've had some like phone calls, and you're a member of Fat Girls Traveling. And I feel like every time I jump on a call with you, we like get really deep into it. And I feel like we're besties, even though we've never met in real life,
Absolutely. That's my favorite thing. Like, that's my favorite thing. Like, I'm always very into astrology, but I only about myself, right? I don't know all the other things. But like, that's everything that I ever it's like, you just want to go in there with social chat. I'm like, yeah. I just feel like you and I have that juicy conversations that I just throw.
We do. I always feel so like energized after our conversations.
Me too.
So I just wanted to kind of capture some of that and just talk about some of the things that I've been talking about on my personal platform, some of the stuff that we talk about when we talk, and just kind of like this whole fat positive, body positive space. And kind of one of the things I feel is really important for like the development or the growth of any community is for people to be able to give constructive criticism and constructive feedback so that we can grow. And I know that it's really difficult to not get defensive sometimes, but I feel like as the leader of Fat Girls Traveling in a space within this fat positive, body positive community, like I often have to be introspective, and I'll get feedback and I'll be like, okay, do I need to change that? Do I need to adjust that? And I feel like within the body positive community, there's all these kind of standards or rules or different things that have been in place, and people feel a certain way about it. And those things are never really questioned to a point where it can become detrimental to the people within the community. And then it also becomes something that is taboo to talk about or taboo to question. And so those are the kind of things that I think that we should talk about, because I feel like, as you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur in this space, as am I. And I feel like we're developing communities, we're leading people, and we are like, I feel like our opinions are important and should be shared, because people look towards us to get information on, self-love, self-care, body positivity, fat activism, all those things.
Absolutely. I'm going to back up. Well, okay, I have so many thoughts, but I absolutely, and I think that we get to be the leaders in that. And one of the reasons that I got into coaching, right, is because I realized really quickly that like, I'm not some big influencer on social media. I don't even know right now, because I just went through and deleted a bunch of creepo men. But I think I have like a little under 3,000 followers, right? Like, that's not big in the whole scheme of things. But what I realized was like the women walking in my store, my clients, my customers, my friends, I'm the only voice that they're hearing, right? Like, I am their influencer, right? Like, I am that voice of them. They're not they don't know about Virgie and Jess and you, and like it's me that gets to go, oh wait, look at this, there's this whole world out here, join it, you're not alone, right? But I feel like I'm at that, like, I'm the front door of that for them, right? So I and almost in a way, like, that is more influential, and I think kind of the same for you. Like, we talked about that, like, there's a lot of women on your site that are just like, oh, I didn't even know there was a thing called fat activism. Like, I'm just a big girl who likes to travel, right? So, like, for you also, like, you're the front door into this world, right? And so we do get to carry the message, and it is important on how we do that, right? Like, there's a responsibility in there. And the other thing I would say, the first thing that popped in my head when you started talking was that idea of, like, how to give constructive criticism. Yes, 100%. But then also it's our responsibility to learn how to receive it. And I think so many people get their feelings hurt because they can't see the constructive criticism for constructive, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and especially with, like, there's so much emotional history tied up into, like, the way that we feel about our bodies. And
Yeah.
so when something that we've dealt with, a lot of us, our entire lives, you know what I mean? When something within us gets triggered from that childhood trauma or that past trauma, the defense is the first thing that comes up. But this isn't, I feel like in body positivity, this isn't the only space. Like, as a travel blogger, I talk about inclusivity at different conferences and stuff like that. And this happens with race. This happens with anything
All of
that
it.
has made you feel other. When something that happens and that triggers that defensive response, sometimes you can't think logically and people just go on emotion. And there's been plenty of times within my community where I've had, I'll say, like, a back and forth with different members because something that someone else posted triggered them in a certain way and made them feel a certain way. Not that that person that posted it intended on it happening, but that person who received it felt triggered, felt confronted by an emotion that they weren't ready to deal with in that time. And so the first thing they do is kind of go on the attack towards the person that posted that photo. And when you're building community, that can be a difficult thing when people within your community are going against each other. But I feel like that is something that is common in all communities, but I feel like it's something that's especially tricky in the body positive community. How have you ever dealt with anything like that? And, like, how do you deal with that?
So first of all, what I'm hearing you say, and what I've experienced myself, is that most of us walk around in the world and we react and we don't respond, right? And, like, we get a little coachy for a minute, but, like,
that's so good. You react instead of respond. Oh my God, light bulb. Yeah.
And, like, most people, right? Like, most people react at either like a victim level or an anger level, right? And that can come out as, like, overwhelmed as victim. I mean, there's a lot of, it can come out as annoyed or displeased, or, there's a lot of different ways that can come out, but our number two reactions are either victim or anger, right? And both of those, there are advantages and disadvantages to both of those reactions, right? And both of those energy levels, right? But I think as women, right, we're taught we're not allowed to be angry. We're taught that we're not allowed to use our voice. We're actually taught a lot that we're not allowed to have a lot of emotion that isn't happy and smiley, right? And so when we're in a space that is deemed a safe space, because it is, like, you've created a safe space on the internet, right? You get to have feelings. But because we've been taught our whole lives that we're not allowed to have feelings, we're all just baby new at them, right? And I do think because people aren't getting help, because therapy and coaching and all of the things are so stigmatized, right? And people aren't having these conversations, right? And it is, like, the world's shifting and changing, and we're having these conversations now. But, like, because for so long we weren't, people don't realize that they're reacting, right? They're just walking around reacting, not realizing it. And we may always react as a victim. We may always react as with anger, right? Like, those might be our defaults. Mine's always victim and overwhelm, right? Like, that's always mine. It's very, like, clouded, like, drowning kind of reaction. but I can't control that first thought. I can't control that first reaction, but I can control that. I can control the second one. And that is how I choose to respond. Right. And I think that if there's a way to like, I'm a big believer in the pause, and I wish more people would pause. Right. And that is why groups like yours online, where we're talking, via type, is great, because I can pause and I can think for a minute and then I can respond appropriately. The problem is, like, that's not a skill set that's valued or taught in this society, right? But we're also fighting against a lot of skill sets that aren't valued and taught. Like we're fighting against cultural norms every day. So if we could bring in a little of this like compassion, right?
That's 1,000% true. And yeah, I definitely feel like that's what I think as far as constructive criticism. I feel like we need to have a little bit more compassion and grace for people when we do initially give that feedback. I think that it's normal that people are going to probably be a little bit defensive, but then there is, and so from what you said, that would be the reaction, the initial reaction. But then after that, there's going to be a response, hopefully. And that means that they're listening, they heard you, and they're willing to make a change to include or to address or to rectify the issue. And I feel
that's
like
the receiving part, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that felt good. Or, ooh, that hurt. Why did that hurt? Like, what did that trigger in me? Oh, the kids used to do that to me, or I used to feel that way when this happened, or whatever, right? Like, we can quickly, if we're paying attention to our feelings, right? We can quickly figure out why did that jab, right? And or why did that photo hurt? Why did that post hurt in the first place, to make me go on there and tell you that you're doing it wrong, right? Because that's really where it starts.
Yeah, and I think that we need to remember that it's going to be the same process on both ends. Mm-hmm. So the person that is giving the feedback is going to feel at first, angry, and then a certain way, and then give the feedback and then wait for the response. The person that's receiving the feedback is going to maybe feel angry or defensive at first, then maybe a little bit introspective, and then be able to give like a response instead of a reaction. But I feel like sometimes with these disagreements, people will tell you that they have an issue with you, and then right now they're looking for the solution to that issue. They're not giving you the space or the compassion to, process that and to deal with it as a human. They want to come with you with an issue, and then immediately you need to have the solution. And then if you don't, and if it's not the right response or the right reaction immediately, then it's this whole cancel culture thing. Then you're canceled, which I fucking hate.
Oh my God. Yeah. And that to me is the shadow side of social media, right? Like, there's a lot of shadow sides of social media. Do not get me wrong. I'm not a big fan. Like, I'm just not. But there's also beautiful things that happen on social media, and that's what keeps me there, right? And like, connecting with you is one of those, right? Like, we don't even live in the same city, right? Like, there's
totally. I would have never met you unless there was social media.
Absolutely. I would have never known about body positivity. I probably would have never gotten healed, right? Or continue to heal on some of these issues around myself and my body if there weren't beautiful, wonderful women trudging the road ahead of me doing this work, right? So it's beautiful, right? So these spaces are beautiful, but like anything, there's a shadow side. And the shadow side is this platforms. And I particularly think Facebook in particular sets it up that like, it's cancel culture, it's conflict culture, it's I'm right, you're wrong, black and white thinking, no room to discuss, no room to lean in, no room to say, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Why do you feel that way? Right? Like, what, like, I mean, I don't want to get into our political climate at all, but like, it's all in there too. It's that, like, I just went back to my hometown. I just spent last weekend in my hometown, and all those people voted differently than me, right? And I get to love them anyway, right? And I get to say things like, wow, I don't feel that way about that issue. Why do you? Right? And then give them space, shut up, and let them say. And if you do that, Brene Brown is so good at talking about this. If you hold hands with strangers, right? Like, then you get to see other sides. You get to see the other side, and then there's where the grace and the compassion comes in. And that can work in this too, right? Like, that can work in this too. Because what we're doing is political, right? Like, what you and I are doing is very political. It's just not always called that. And I don't, because the word political has such a negative connotation, I don't really go in my marketing that way. But that's what we're doing. We're change makers, right? And that's political. And it stirs people up on this like deep level, right? Like we're stirring it up, and then boom, they're reacting, right? And we're getting a bunch of people in these groups too that also are coming at it on all levels, right? Like, we've talked about this before. Like, you have people who know what body positivity is. You have people that know what fat activism is. You know people that, like, gosh, I really have never worn shorts in public before. Gosh, I would love to wear that bikini. And you have people that are like, oh, I rock a thong, or I run around like this all the time, right? Or you have people that are just like, oh, I'm just some fat girl that likes to travel, or I can't use the word fat, right? Like, you have
Totally.
right? Like, oh, that group looks interesting. I hope it's private. I don't want anyone to see that I'm using the word fat. Like, you know what I mean? You get everybody. Everybody walks to the door, right? And they're all, meet them where they're at. And I think the community we need to meet each other where we're at too, right? We need to meet each other where we're at.
I agree. And I definitely think that my next question for you was going into like, what do you think body positivity is? And I feel like everyone has a different definition of what body positivity is to them. But I think that the bottom line is that in this community, we do need to meet people where they are. And I think that is the only way that we're really going to be able to encourage growth within each other. So I feel like no matter what we call it, it really is just based on like compassion and being able to not have expectations of people and just meet them where they are and try to help them build from there. But what do you think is body positivity, and kind of about what I just said?
Yeah. So I have a very general definition of body positivity. I think that it just means all bodies are good bodies. That doesn't mean that's everybody, right? Like, everybody's body is valid, right? And it doesn't matter if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're cisgendered, if you're transgendered, if you're able-bodied, if you're black, brown, whatever, white, some version in between there, it doesn't matter, right? Like, tall, short, you name it, all bodies are valid. Now, and that is a utopia that I wish we lived in, right? And I do wholeheartedly believe in that concept. Now it gets tricky for me, right? Because in that, my niche is plus size women, right? I don't care if you're cisgendered or transgendered or what color your skin is or how, where you're at on that scale of fatness, right? Or any of that, but that's my niche, right? So I tend to, what I fight for more is a little bit of more fat acceptance and fat activism, but that's loaded, right? Like, that, you put the word activism out there and you're instantly, that's a strong word that triggers a lot of emotions to people. And it comes up for me, and for example, in my not so skinny dip, but my plus size pool party, right? Like, there was a whole gambit of feelings and emotions that came out in that. It was the second year I did it, and it was very popular this year, right? Like, we had a very good turnout the first year, but this year was a little bit more popular because of Shrill. It was marketed better. And it kind of went viral on a local level. Like, the local newspaper picked it up, and I got shared 5,000 times, which is, was on the front page of the Times-Picayune website for, I don't know, a week or something. Like, so on a local level, it got a lot of attention. And that brought on everybody's feelings, right? And suddenly the invite page, right? Like the Facebook invite for the pool party turned into a mini community, and it turned into a mini kind of platform like you have, right? And men, women, everybody came in, and it was like, well, if you're body positive, all bodies matter, and so I get to come, right? Like I'm a thin-bodied, this is primarily happening from thin-bodied white women, right? Like I'm a thin-bodied white woman who hates herself. Can I come to the party? Right? And I gotta tell you, I'm just gonna be really honest, it was really hard for me to manage. And while I think I did a really good job on how I handled it, I will be handling it different next year. And it's not to take away that those feelings aren't valid, right? Like body shaming goes both ways, right? Like it's really hard for fat women to understand this, but telling someone to go get a cheeseburger is just as wounding, as damaging as telling me to go eat a salad, right? Like it's the same, that is the same energy. It is the same unvalidating, like it stirs up a lot, and it's real, right? But that's a different issue, right? Like a thin-bodied white woman who hates themselves. Oh, I can feel that, right? Like I can feel that to my core. I was that when I was 16 years old, that's not who I'm choosing to hold space for, And so I had to change that. And I felt as a business, I felt like I couldn't say what I actually wanted to say, which was, no, I'm sorry, you can't come to my party. And I got tripped up in a lot of limiting beliefs of like what a business owner should be and what a business owner can and cannot say on a public platform. And I got really concerned that I was gonna lose customers over it, or if I really said the things that I actually wanted to say. And like I said, I'm thinking about it a little differently now that we're on the other side of it. But luckily, I was well supported by my lady tribe, and I had some fat women and thin-bodied women that went on there and said some things. What I ultimately did for the event, though, let me wrap up that story before I get off on another rant, is I kind of invoked consent rules on that. Like, okay, I'm just gonna let your friends vet you. Like, so if you're a man, because I was getting a lot too, like, can my fat husband come? I'm a big guy. I hate my body too. I do a yoga class, and our instructor's a fat man. A lot of the men in the class are fat, so it's like, oh, do the guys get to come? Like, that's valid. Their feelings are valid too, right? And so what I ended up doing, which I don't think was wrong, which is kind of let everybody vet each other, right? Like, you could come if you were thin-bodied or male identifying. You could come to the party as long as you were accompanied by a plus-size lady friend. And I will say, for the most part, that worked. I think that there were one guy in particular that was making some people uncomfortable, but and then one straight or thin-bodied white woman that was making people uncomfortable. But I think that was more of just because she was drunk and didn't have boundaries. But that was interesting, right? Like, it was an interesting thing because
added some spice to the party. No,
because I am body positive, right? Like I am, right? Like I do, right? Like I do believe all bodies are good bodies, right? And I walk that walk, right? And I really do believe in that. But in this case, that's not who I'm going to choose to hold space for next year. Next year, it'll be very limited to, are you plus size? And are you female identifying? You can come to this party. And I'm going to define that by, like, if you can buy clothes in my store, then that's the cutoff, Totally. Because it was a little problematic, right? And I wish in some utopian world, and I think we will get there someday, maybe not in this lifetime, but that we can live in a world where we don't have to have black girl magic parties, right? Like, we don't have to have, trans lives matter and black lives matter and fat acceptance and all of that, and we can live in some utopia where we can truly have a body positive event where all bodies are valid and recognized and can hold space for each other. But we're not there yet. And I think that we start by figuring out who our tribe is and holding space with them, and then together as a group, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like that's like a big debate within the body positive community, is like, what is body positivity? Because originally body positivity was a product of like fat activism, and body positivity was supposed to be a positive expression for fat, queer, disabled bodies. And now it's been definitely commercialized to mean that like all bodies are great. But I don't necessarily think that that's a negative thing. I feel like it's almost body positivity 2.0. It's like the updated version of it that is like more
Like
inclusive. Yeah, it's like the second generation of body positivity that's inclusive to all bodies. However, that more commercial form of body positivity has been kind of co-opted by diet culture and kind of like anyone who feels like they're having a bad body day. But I feel like that is one of the major rifts within the community, within the body positive community. Is body positivity for everybody, or is it only for the most marginalized bodies? And in my head, it was originally intended for the more marginalized bodies, which I do feel that we need to continue to amplify. But I also feel that as the movement grows, it needs to be inclusive of everybody while still amplifying those more marginalized voices. But I feel that some people are like, nope. I feel like some people are like, nope, it's only for the marginalized. It's not for thin people. It's not for anyone else. It's not for small fats. It's not for medium fats. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's getting very divisive. And now body positivity, either you're on this side where I feel like we're both on the side where it's like, it's for everybody. Or you're on the side where it's like, nope, only for fat, Black, queer, disabled people. That's who it was originally for. That's who it needs to stay for. And anyone who thinks differently, you know, you're promoting diet culture.
Yes.
Do you feel that within the community?
I do, and but I also like, it's so hard and it's so loaded and it's so many things. And yes, and this is what I see is happening. And I'm just gonna talk really bluntly, and I don't know if this is gonna get me in trouble on the internet or not, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I'm a medium fat to a small fat. I'm a white woman. I'm pretty fucking privileged, right? I also have been marginalized in so many ways in my life that I feel other, right? Like, I feel other, right? But I also know that I walk in the world a little bit more privileged than you, just by the accident of my skin tone, right? And when I look at some of the hashtags on Instagram, for example, it makes my soul sick to see these thin, able-bodied white women, I'm assuming of privilege, using those hashtags. It hurts my soul to see them stamp out the voices of the other, right? It does. And that's what I'm saying. I also, I was one of them at 16. I hated myself to my core. I just went out for drinks with my high school boyfriend that I hadn't seen in 20 years. And we were talking about that. He read my blog. He had no idea, right? But I didn't know I wasn't fat when I was dating him, right? And we just didn't know because society told me that. So what happens, and I think the reason it's hurting my soul that these women who look like me when I was 16 are co-opting these hashtags, it's because all I'm seeing is diet culture in there. I'm seeing these before and after posts, and I'm seeing this like, oh, look at my little tiny piece of cellulite, and like all of that sort of thing. And I'm seeing diet culture creep into the body positive space, and I'm seeing white privilege creep into the body positive space, right? In a way that it's not good, y'all. It is not good, right? Like, I am a white woman. I have issue with white women in general as a group, you know? And that's what breaks my soul when I see that, because it is pushing out. It is, they're not coming at it, from what I can see, they're not coming at it of, I hate myself and it's okay that you're fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the different. Am I making any sense?
That makes total sense. And I do agree that I also see and feel the white privilege and sizeism, diet culture creeping into, I see and feel it creeping into the body positive or fat activist, fat positive space. And I see it in a couple different ways. But one of the main issues that I'm having, and I want to actually get into it with you and ask if you have ever dealt with anything like this, but I'm definitely seeing a lot of sizeism within the fat positive and body positive community. And to me, that is just another example of diet culture. And we were talking about this before on a conversation that we were having. In my mind, fat people, me, you know, we felt othered because we were excluded or we were made fun of because of our size, told that we were too fat, told that our bodies weren't acceptable. And that is because society, you know, conforms to, you know, Western beauty standards and upholds, you know, the policies of diet culture. Now, within these fat communities, there is, in my mind, segregation between, it's starting to be segregated between like the larger fats, the medium fats, the smaller fats, and obviously the reason why we're having this conversation is because constructive criticism is important, and obviously we need to be honest and transparent. That's the only way that we can grow. However, I feel like people are almost attacking each other based on size in the same way that we were attacked when we were children because we were too big. And I feel like in a way it's like a defense mechanism. For years you're beat up and bullied because of your size, and now you get into a community where you feel empowered by other people, and that almost empowers you to be a bully and to beat down other people unconsciously who are different and who aren't at the expectation that you thought of them. So maybe you're a large fat, and in some ways you're trying to stifle or beat down the voices of the medium fats or the small fats, and the way that thinner people beat you down in high school or in elementary school or whatever childhood trauma triggered you. So it's kind of like within the fat community, you're getting your revenge on the smaller people that harassed you as a child, but not knowing that you're also traumatizing people who are already traumatized because they're fat as well, you know? And so that's something that frustrates me. It's something that I know has been happening in the fat community, but I feel that, as we were just saying, like diet culture and, you know, white privilege or, you know, supremacy, whatever you want to call it, is creeping into it. And it's to a point now where I think people need to start acknowledging and having conversations about it, or before we know it, it's going to be too late, you know? So have you ever been? Yeah.
Yeah, I have been. It doesn't happen a lot, but I've gotten comments and I've gotten DMs about not being fat enough. So that's interesting. And I've also like, and then like, just as I say that, I feel like there's this thing that happens inside me, and I think I need to qualify my fatness, right? Like,
yeah.
I've been every size from a 12 to a 28 and back again. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not.
Yeah, you need to like, check all the boxes of fat that you've.
But I've been there. I've done all of it, and I didn't diet, and you know, like I just like it. Just there's something right, like that society, that diet culture that's creeping in.
That's
right?
the diet culture. Bam, right there in your
right,
brain,
like
where
right
you feel
there,
like you have to measure up to the expectation of fat enough, you know.
And so I can't. I no longer diet to purposely change the size that I am, right? And my body has naturally settled somewhere between a size 14 and a size 18, and it kind of swings back and forth between that, right? And that's just where my body has settled. There's not a lot I can do about that, right? I'm also 6'2". There's not a damn thing I can do about that. And I'm also a white woman. There's not a damn thing I can do about that either. And so I do get it, right? I understand why the super fats had their feelings hurt that I don't have clothes that go over a size 28. You know, I'm the first person at market begging these designers to give me bigger, right? I get excited. I do a happy dance and scream up and down and hug them when they make a 4X, right? And the super fats don't know I'm doing that, right? Like, they don't know, right? And I'm not doing that to toot my own horn. It just means like we're broken. Society's broken. And so I can only imagine what it looks like to see someone, you know, my size talking this talk and then going to my website and going, but she doesn't have clothes for me, or she doesn't have very many clothes for me, or whatever that is, right? I do my best. I do my best to have empathy, and I do my best to use my privilege in a way that can make some change, right? Like, I do my best to be aware of my privilege, right? And when I am in a place where I'm not aware of my privilege, right? Like, and I get told, I do my best to change behavior around that. And I think our closest example to that, of what's happening in the fat communities with the sizeism, I think it's really interesting, and you could speak more on this than I could, of color and race, right? Like, it to me, it looks very parallel.
I agree. I definitely think that it's very similar to colorism, because within the Black community, I would be considered like medium skin, but I would have, and I do have, more privilege than someone who's darker skinned, just because societally, the lighter, you know, the lighter, the brighter, the lighter the skin, the more beautiful. Society thinks that. So I have had an easier go at life just based on the fact that my skin is a medium complexion of brown versus a dark complexion. You know what I mean? And within the Black community, there's a lot of trauma and issue and emotion, like, hung on to the skin color and to the hair texture. You know what I mean? Depending on the hair texture, that would also equate the type of beauty. So there's a lot of these different little microscopic things that trigger a lot of insecurity and feelings of other. And I do relate the sizism that I feel and that I'm starting to see within Fat Girls Traveling to some of the colorism that I see within the Black community. But something that you said that really resonated with me, and something that is important to me, is that, especially with the Fat Girls Traveling Facebook group, like, I don't really allow a lot of fashion stuff on the main page because of the fact that a lot of fashion isn't completely inclusive to all sizes. And I don't want it to be a space where people above a certain size feel like they're excluded because all that they see on the main page is fashion questions. And it's not anything that they can, you know what I mean, that they can wear. And then another thing is, I just recently signed on 2 boutiques to sell some stuff at Fat Camp, only because one of them goes up to 4X and the other one goes up to 5X. And like, looking at the campers that are attending, they're from 1X to 4X. So I know that everyone that is coming to camp will be able to find something. But like last year and going forward, if I don't get people that are going to be offering sizes that are available to everyone at camp, it's one of those things where it's like you were saying, you feel guilty and you're advocating behind the scenes, and there's all this work that you're doing to try to bring products to people, fat people of all sizes. But people get in their feelings when they go into your store and you don't have anything. they're upset with you because you don't have anything. But the issue is with the people that are manufacturing and designing and selling the product. If they don't make it in that size, there's no way that you can make it available to your customers.
Yeah, we might be going on another rant, but are a different direction than you want to go. Please pull me back in. But I will say this about the fashion. I can sell them. The reason I don't have a lot of 4Xs is because they're my first size to go. And so this is how I best do this. And I would love any feedback on this if I'm missing something. But I try to do, I say we do 12 and above, right? And I try, but I can't get a 12W, right? It's just as hard for me to get as a 4Xs. And it's kind of that lost size in fashion, kind of like the 4X and the 12W, like kind of a 0X. A lot of people make an extra large, but it's not quite the same, right? And so I try to get as many 12Ws as I can, and I try to get as many 4X as I can. All of my clothes come 14 to 24. All of them come 1X, 2X, 3X, right? And when I can get a 12 and when I can get a 4X, I jump up and down in glee, right? So, and then some of my brands will let me special order a 5X, right? So it's something, it's not ideal, right? But I always I have my 5X list of girls and I email them the photos and, and I do what I can, but it is interesting. What I think is interesting too, that's happening in the plus size fashion, because I've been in this for over a decade, plus size has gotten trendier, but in a weird way, we have less options.
I agree. And I feel like I was messaging, we have the Fat Girls Packing subgroup, which is the subgroup of Fat Girls Traveling. And so in that group specifically, we're talking only about fashion and packing. And so I shared the link about Prim and how Prim is closing. And that's the clothing line with Nicolette and Gabby Fresh. And so I was asking people, have you heard about this? What do you think? Why do you think that they closed the doors? And a lot of the responses were that they loved both of the bloggers, but they thought that the line skewed too young. None of the stuff would they be able to wear at work. You know what I mean? They said there were too many crop tops, too much glitter. There weren't any staples. And for me, I'm a super trendy girl and I'm all about a crop top and some glitter and sparkles. But I can definitely see, looking at that collection, how either the market skews either really young and trendy and someone who is really risk-taking and wants to show cleavage and body con dresses, or someone who's extremely conservative and wants to cover everything up. There's very few things that are affordable and, more moderate.
So I can't really speak on Prim. I don't know Gabby or Nicolette personally, right? I know who they are. But I will say them and a couple of other independent designers, I won't wholesale, right? So that's right? I did reach out to them and they didn't wholesale, and and it's not just them, right? I've reached out to some of these other independent designers and they won't wholesale. So I don't know what that business model is for them. But I will tell you this, when my first store, I feel like there was more small independent boutiques. So we're talking 2006 to, let's say 2010, I feel like is where I started seeing, maybe 2011, I started seeing people close their doors. But there was maybe 8 to 10 of us. We were all about the same age. We had stores in Chicago and Milwaukee and Philadelphia and Brooklyn and Baltimore and, the Twin Cities and the Midwest and, just around, right? And there were also independent designers, right? There were all these girls coming out of LA, there were women coming out of New York, and there were these small indie brands, right? And we would get together and we all supported each other. And, we would all buy enough off the line sheets of these independent brands. Cause I'm buying 6 to 10 pieces of a dress, right? And so that's not enough for the manufacturer to cut, right? And so, but if, 10 of us are buying that many, that's enough to get a cut ticket, right? Like that's enough to get them to cut it, right? And so there was this nice synergy happening, and we all knew each other, and we'd see each other at market, and we'd call each other on the phone for advice. I'm still friends with some of these girls, right? And we all closed for different reasons. Some of them were financial reasons, some of them were lifestyle reasons. I closed my first store for my own personal reasons, and and it just kind of dwindled. But so it was interesting because I actually feel like I had more choice back then. Now that I'm back on the scene for the past 3 years, there are less independent designers, but plus size is trendy, and there's more of your Eloquis and your Forever 21s and your H&Ms and your Additionals, and Lane Bryant and Torrid have always been there, but like, you know what I mean? Like there's more of that. Their Anthropologie. I can't get my hands on 90% of those designers selling Anthropologie. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's really interesting. And I don't mean that as a woe is me, but it's just, I don't even know what to name that, but it's a really interesting shift that I think that's happened in plus size. And I just wonder if some of these more independent designers were more supportive of the independent boutiques, if we would get some of them back, right? Like, or get new, different versions of them, right? Or we would, like, I don't know, we were thriving together in a way, like we were all
That's so interesting. And that's so interesting because I worked in wholesale and I did all of those shows. I used to go to Magic. I used to go to Coterie, like all of those trade shows. I was going twice a year, doing trend forecasting, wholesale for different, like selling. So on both different buying, selling on both sides of that. And it's so interesting because now that you mentioned that Prim wasn't selling wholesale to the boutiques, I did know that. And that is interesting that it changed. And now the designers aren't really wanting support from the boutiques, which is so interesting. And I feel like in a way it probably has a lot to do with social media and people thinking that they have enough strength and numbers on social platforms to not be able to have to order things and have them on inventory, to have them sold, or because sometimes if you buy things wholesale and they don't sell, then you do chargebacks, or you do.
But but that's the thing though. The independent boutique doesn't have sorry, I get very upset about chargebacks. I don't have the luxury of a chargeback.
You don't do charge. Okay, yeah.
I don't have the luxury of that with my buying power. Macy's does, Bloomingdale's does. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
When I put something on sale, that is coming out of
cutting into your pocket. Yep, coming right? Out of your profit margin.
On sale, that's coming out of the designer's pocket.
Yeah. Sorry, we're getting super technical because I went to college, I went to FITM, and so I went to school for buying, and like I said, I've been on both sides
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is mind blowing to me to think that the plus size designers wouldn't, like, that's not the first place that they would go to, is the plus size boutiques to have them, hey, carry my stuff,
but there's not as many of me anymore, right? There's not as many women doing what I'm doing, right? Mm-hmm. But I wonder
why
it's easier to get access to unique things that aren't, in Macy's or Dillard's or wherever you're at, right? Like, would it be
totally?
Would they still be around?
And so super random slash like pivot, you mentioned Forever 21. What's your thought on this Forever 21 Atkins diet scandal? This wasn't on my list. This is just like a hot topic. Like,
oh my God, I honestly don't know anything about it.
So basically what happened was some plus size
from the news, so sorry.
Well, I'm at camp, so the only thing I get is like Twitter and Instagram. Like, I get my news through social media, which is terrible, but I'm in a cabin in the woods. I don't have cable, I don't have a TV, but basically Forever 21, some plus size buyers, some plus size shoppers from Forever 21 open their package, yay, my stuff is here, and they see Atkins diet bars. And so they tweet it and they're like, Forever 21 plus, like, promoting diet culture, this and that, this and that. Forever 21 hasn't really responded yet, but their people have said that they they did a collaboration with the Atkins platform. So every person of all sizes, everything.
I'm sure that's true.
that every person of all size got an Atkins bar, not just the Forever Plus client.
That's probably true. But also, like, let's just talk about that. Like, let's just talk about diet culture, right? Like, they're probably not lying, right? They probably did put it in every box, right? But like, that's diet culture and retail, right? Like, that's diet culture and fashion just tied together, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Get more ancestral than that, right?
My only concern is that as a society, we're starting to put these emotional expectations on these brands where we're expecting a company like Forever 21 to raise up body positivity or to have some moral high ground on this political thing, when I think that all they really give a fuck about is their bottom line, and Atkins paid them money to put the bars in the thing.
I promise you that's all they give a fuck about, but I'm not, I don't know anything about Forever 21. I don't pay attention to their ads. I don't follow them on Instagram, so I don't have a lot to say about that particular brand.
Yeah.
But I will say, as a brand in general, right, if you're going to advertise to me like you're body positive, you better put your money where your mouth is. You better not be putting Atkins bars in my, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to use body positivity as a marketing gimmick, just like all the brands that use, I mean, this is the clear example for this is all the brands that got behind Pride for the month of June, right? Like, you better have rainbow shit the rest of the month, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like, if you're gonna get on this body positive kick and you're gonna use that to market to me, you better walk the walk. And I do think you need to have a moral high ground with that, right? Like, you don't get to use me.
So that's the tricky part, and I agree with you, but for me, I get into these type of situations as almost devil's advocate, because I have to look at these type of issues from so many different perspectives. What about the person, as we talked about earlier, body positivity? My version of body positivity is accepting of everyone and just wants everyone to love their body. In my community, which is a body positive community, some of those members are actively losing weight. Some of those members are probably on Atkins diet. You know what I mean? So within the body positive community are people who are consciously losing weight and consciously taking these, dietary supplements or these or that or whatever. That, in a way, which I think is, what do they call it? Bastardizing body positivity. But like we were saying, diet culture is sneaking into body positivity. And like you said, within Fat Girls Traveling, there are people who hate their bodies, who are dieting, and they joined it because they're a fat person who travels. They don't know that there's this body positive space. They don't know there's this fat active space where you don't diet and where, you know what I mean? Like, some people come into this community, like you said, you're the front door, I'm the front door to people who don't know that within this body positive community, that means that you can't sell your diet shit to us. So what about the people within this community that want diet shit sold to them? That's the tricky part. You know what I mean? Okay, like, I'm just being the devil advocate within our version of body positivity. Those people are allowed. The people that are still trying to figure it out.
I mean, at least once a week, I have a customer who walks to the door that just told me she had weight loss surgery. So, and know, it's allowed, right? Like, I mean, totally. I had weight loss surgery. I will tell you all the reasons of why I could go back and blah, 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 and don't, wish I would have done it and all that, but I did it. It was part of my journey. I'm here today because of it, right?
Totally.
But, and so when they tell me that, I go, okay, great. You're going to need new clothes. Like, what am I supposed to say? But here's what I do, and this is what I expect people like Forever 21 to do, but I know they're not going to do it, right? But if the world was a better place, it's the damage of diet, right? It's the Linda Bacon telling us with all the evidence that diets don't work, right? It's the 1,000,001 research studies that say diets don't work and not a single one that says diets work, right? Like it's that moral obligation, right? That I feel so damaging, right? When you mirror the diet culture and the fashion culture like that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not in some sort of la la land, right? Like I'm in reality. I understand that Forever 21 is going to keep doing it, or whoever, right? But it would be nice to see if you're going to use body positivity as a marketing platform, then keep your diet culture out of it, right? And so, but yes, I would assume the majority of my customers are on a diet. I would.
That's interesting.
And I was on a diet my whole life, right? It was only 4 years ago I stopped dieting or something like that, right? Weird thing is I lost a bunch of weight when I stopped dieting. That was a whole nother thing to talk about, right? I got good fatty the first time in my life when I wasn't even dieting, but that's a whole nother, that's weird, right? That's anyway, we could get into that, like comments.
We definitely need to have another conversation about your weight loss, anyway, body positive journey. Like,
in that, right? Like, I'm not going to talk to them about their diet, right? It says in my handbook of my sales team that we don't talk about diets in here, right? If someone wants to tell me that they've just lost 20 pounds or whatever, I'm going to say, that's great. Let's get you some new jeans, or gosh, you probably need a new bra. And I'm not going to let them tell me, like they told their girlfriends, all of the restrictive eating they did and all the exercise they did. And I'm not going to let them have that triggering conversation in my store. I'm going to shift it to something that's positive that I can hold space for, right? I'm never going to go, oh, wow, look at that. You lost a bunch of weight, or, oh, you've gained a bunch of weight, right? Like I have to know a customer. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking I was just in the dressing room with someone the other day and I went, oh, wow, you've lost weight. But I've known her for so long, and she had like enough that like we had to, like, I was pulling the wrong size for her, right? Like that's how that came out of my mouth, right? And so, and we all, like, it's in us, right? Like there's no way you can come out, you know, like I was with that old boyfriend, and he was like, what made you think you were fat? Like, how did you not like yourself? Like, I don't understand. He was very confused, right? About like how I hated myself. And he's like, where do you think you learned that from? And I was like, where did I learn it from? Right? Like it's everywhere. Right?
It's everywhere.
And sometimes it's still my first thought.
And that's the thing, is that we're human. You know what I mean? And people think that because you have a store, or because I have Fat Girls Traveling, that like these diet culture or these self-hateful thoughts never creep in. And the thing is, the messaging to hate your body is coming in at you 100 billion times a day at 2 million seconds per hour. You know what I mean? It's constantly coming at you. And so, for the most part, I can fight it off, and I have my like superhero cape and shield and my Thor, hammer, but I'm human like everyone else, and it creeps through sometimes. You know what I mean? And we're only human, and everyone needs to remember that too. And I think that people really do think that body positivity is like this like destination that you get there and you're just on this island where you just love yourself. You never have a shitty day. You love every inch of yourself, and you just look at your body with such love and acceptance, and that is bullshit.
True. It's not true.
Bullshit.
It's not true. I'm writing a blog piece right now about me hating my thighs, which is very interesting. But also like that picture of me that Shug took covered in glitter.
The glitter. I love it.
So I wasn't tagged in that, because I didn't know if I wanted that on the internet. When Shug put that on their page, they were like, do you want me to tag you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you could put that on your page. I don't know, right? That was my least favorite photo from the whole shoot. I didn't even show it to the man that I was dating at the time, right? And this is the weird thing, right? Like, this is the humanness of it. When Body Positive Panty picked that photo up and it went viral, I hated myself that day. Before I even realized I was going viral, I was having a bad body day. bad body day. I was in a weird depression funk. Not weird. It happens. I suffer from depression. You know, another thing we could talk about. There's so many, right? But like, I was in a funk, right? Like some things were happening in my external world, right? That was causing a depression. I was not having a good day. I wasn't having a good week. And all of a sudden, this thing goes viral of all these people feeling the joy of a photo I don't really like.
I remember when it went viral, and when Shug posted it, I thought it was you, but then it went viral, and then you shared it on your platform, and you were like, I didn't really like this picture, blah, blah, blah. And I commented, I was like, I knew that was you. Like, when I saw the picture, they didn't...
regret that I wasn't tagged.
Because yeah, when they shared it, they didn't tag you, and so I didn't mention it because I was like, well, I didn't know if you wanted people to know it was you. I wasn't 1,000% sure, but I was like, that looks like Jaclyn. I think it's her. But yeah,
you know, and I didn't like the photo for a couple things. I've done some work around this, but at the time, and I can still go there, like, I don't really like my boobs. They're saggy. They point to the ground. They have been 15 years old, right? And I didn't like the angle, right? I didn't like the angle of the photo. There were more technically better photos in the shoot, and I'm trained as a photographer, right? So I'm looking at, that's what my background is. And my background's in photojournalism and anthropology. How I ended up in fashion is a whole other story. But but like I thought they were technically better photos in the shoot. I love you, Shug. I don't mean this badly. Like, I adore you.
But that was the most relatable one.
But that was
me.
The relatable one. And it was the one that
I didn't see any of the other ones, but I saw that and I related immediately.
Because it was a moment. They captured a moment. I was twirling down the street behind my neighborhood, and the sun broke through the clouds, and I went, and I was so happy in my body at that moment. I was so happy in my artistic expression in that moment. I was so happy with my rebel girl spirit in that moment, right?
Oh, man.
Fun, right? Like, it was this moment in time and a feeling, and they captured that, and you and every other person that liked it or shared it on the internet could feel that, right? Yep. I was depressed the day it went viral. I was hating myself. My parents were having all kinds of feelings about the work I was doing. That moment didn't help. We're in a good place now. Hi, Mom. And I remember telling my partner at the time, I was like, this thing is happening. And I had just been on the phone with him the night before going like, hey, babe, we were in a long distance relationship. And I was like, hey, babe, heads up. I'm going through depression right now, right? Like, I need to share that with you. So if like something, like if a text comes off weird or something, like, you need to know that I'm doing this. And we were just having a conversation the night before about me being depressed, right? And then this thing happens, and I'm like, I didn't even show that to him because I didn't like my boobs in it. Right? Like, it was interesting, right? But I also have, you know what it was? It was an opportunity for growth.
Yep.
I love that photo now, and now I laugh, right? My Leo rising in me that wants everyone to know me. Is so mad that I wasn't tagged in the photo.
Well, speaking of opportunities for growth, let's wrap this up with where you feel is an opportunity for growth within the body positive, fat activist, fat positive community. Like, how can we, if we started this conversation with like, hey, this is some constructive feedback, what are some takeaways? What are some opportunities for growth?
I think that we could start it completely full circle, right? Like, we end this exactly where we started with, like, make space for each other and hold space for each other and stay curious. I think curiosity is the antidote to hatred or hurt feelings or any sort of catabolic energy, right? Any sort of negative energy. I think curiosity is the answer to that, right? And like that, like, oh wow, I don't feel that way, tell me more about that. Or really curious to why this photo of me or this caption that I said triggered that reaction in you, right? Like, that wasn't my intention. I think it's that I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. So, you know, go watch her podcast or her TED Talk and watch her Netflix thing and read all her books if you haven't done it all yet. But I think it's that you can't be courageous without being vulnerable, right? And so we're all be vulnerable. Say things, ask questions, right? Lean in, right? Like and it takes courage, right? It takes courage to go, gosh, Annette, that really hurt my feelings when you said that. I don't think that was your intention. Can you tell me what that was about, please? You know, like, you know, and then shut up and then shut the fuck up and listen.
Definitely. No, that's really good. That's a really good takeaway. I always feel like it's so important to remind each other just to have that compassion and to remember to be kind. I feel like a lot of time when something is happening, like when something's going on within Fat Girls Traveling within my community and someone's upset about something, and someone's giving me feedback that I know is kind of drenched in their own like emotional history and doesn't really have anything to do with what is happening in that moment. I can tell it's just a triggered response. It's important for me to remember to be compassionate to them and to just, you know, accept that they're going through something. And that makes me not react or feel a certain way. That helps me have a little bit more compassion for what they're going through. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to change the way that I do things. But when something happens and I'm confronted in that moment, I try to remind myself that, like, okay, this person is reacting because of this, and I just need to try not to react as well. Otherwise, we're both going to be reacting in the situation and no one is going to be able to move forward and to prevent the issue from escalating.
I don't think there's a human being walking on this planet that isn't wounded in some
Agreed.
way.
Yeah.
In some way, right? Even the skinny white women of privilege who are co-opting our hashtags, right?
Totally. Yep. Exactly.
Themselves in some way, right? Like,
and they feel similar. They feel similarly to us. Yeah. They feel similarly. Yeah. It's so. It's a trip.
I also think it is no one can change me but me, right? No one can change me but me. And so it is my responsibility to do the work. Yeah. And it is my responsibility to go, wow, what is that for you? And to shut up and listen, right? And then I get to go, gosh, I was showing up kind of privileged there and I didn't know that. How can I change my action differently? Or, no, that doesn't work for me. Sorry, I'm going to keep going, right? Like, but it's
and I think that it takes work, like you were saying, when someone's confronted with something, it's either the defense or the victimhood. And it takes a lot of work within yourself to be able to identify that your initial reaction might be that, and to have the maturity to be able to go back and say, okay, I know my initial reaction was this or that, but now we need to move forward and work through this. And I know that that's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that takes work, but that is really when the compassion and the kindness kicks in, is after you have time to reflect and after you allow someone that time to reflect and allow them to come back to you and then try to move forward after they've had that initial reaction, you know?
This is my number one rule. Well, I don't know. I have a million rules, but this is
this is my number 72 rule.
But if every day, if it feels urgent, pause. Right? Every day. I have this little drawer on my desk and it says that. If it feels urgent, pause.
Wow.
And that keeps me out of reacting. That keeps my wounded self, my young self, right? Because it's the for the fat stuff, right? For the body stuff, it's my little 14-year-old that got chanted ogre when she walked through the halls and tater tots thrown at her at lunch, right? Like, she's the one that has her feelings hurt because I'm suddenly, you know, I don't fit in, right? I don't fit in, right? But I belong, right?
Yeah.
And
totally.
so if it feels urgent, pause.
Wow.
Change
That's
the world.
incredible.
Everyone would do that. Imagine if our president would do that before he tweeted.
Right? He's like, this isn't urgent. I won't tweet. Nah, that's too introspective. Nope, won't put it past him. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was such a great conversation. We'll definitely do another one.
I love you. Can we just do these? I don't know. Weekly?
Just every week we'll do it.
To be talk. Is anyone gonna listen to all
It's been
that?
an hour. It's been an hour. I've made sure to keep an eye on the time just so that like it's not too long because we both will go on, you know. But I love you. Thanks so much for your time.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Have a great day.
Bye.
Yay.
Okay. Oh, we're still there.
I stopped the video. Okay. Oh, wait, let's see. It's stop recording.